What does it really take to get rid of a safety law that's been around for over 50 years? Today, we're diving into Malaysia's huge move to completely reset how they handle workplace safety and what it means for, well, pretty much everyone who has a job.
And that's really the big question here, isn't it? It sounds kind of weird, right? Why on earth would you scrap a law that's been in place for decades? Well, the answer is actually pretty fascinating, and it tells us a lot about how our ideas about keeping people safe at work have evolved.
Okay, so to really get why this change was so important, we've got to rewind a bit. Let's take a look at the old law they got rid of, the Factories and Machinery Act of 1967.
So what you're seeing here is basically a century of safety law evolution, all on one slide. It's pretty wild. It all kicked off with something super specific, things like steam boilers way back in 1898. Fast forward and things get way more complex, which brings us to the big one, the Factories and Machinery Act of 1967. Let's just call it the FMA. And this law, it was the bedrock of workplace safety for over half a century.
The easiest way to think about the FMA is like a really strict security guard, but for factories. His whole job was pretty straightforward. Control the environment, keep a super detailed list of all the heavy-duty machinery, and make sure every single piece got inspected. And, for the time it was created, back in that industrial boom, it made perfect sense.
But here's the catch. A law that was perfect for the 1960s, well, it started to show some pretty serious cracks as the world changed. And those cracks were most visible in the most dangerous industries.
And this is where those cracks weren't just problems. They were becoming fatal. Take the construction industry, for example. It had the highest number of deaths, and a lot of that came down to this one massive loophole. Get this, you only needed a safety officer on a project if it was worth over 20 million ringgit. That meant all these smaller but still incredibly dangerous construction sites had zero professional safety oversight. And it gets worse. Even on the big sites, safety officers often didn't have any real power. They could be pressured by their bosses to just not report accidents. So the whole system was broken.
So you've got these huge systemic problems. The government realized that just putting a Band-Aid on the old law wasn't going to cut it. Nope, it was time to tear it down and start fresh.
And that's exactly what they did. October 27th, 2021. That's the date everything changed. Parliament made a huge move. They didn't just amend the old FMA, they repealed it, wiped it off the books completely. And they took all its power and channeled it into a much newer, more modern law, the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1994. You've probably heard of it, OSHA.
Now, this was way more than just swapping out some legal documents. It was a fundamental shift in philosophy. Think about it like this. The old FMA was a rule book. Super rigid, very do this, don't do that. But the new OSHA, it's all about self-regulation. The goal isn't just government control anymore. It's about prevention from the inside out. And it's not just for factories, it covers all workplaces. We're moving from a follow-the-rules checklist to a think-about-the-risks mindset.
All right, so they made this huge change. What's the verdict? Well, like with any big reform, there are some pretty clear upsides. But, and this is a big but, there was also a major trade-off.
Okay, let's talk about the good stuff first, because there's a lot of it. For starters, by putting everything under one roof, under OSHA, you get one single clear safety law. No more confusion or overlap. It's about throwing out those ancient regulations and bringing in a modern system that's all about creating a culture of safety. The idea is that everyone, from the boss to the newest hire, takes ownership. And maybe the biggest win, it now protects people in all workplaces, not just factories.
But in doing all that, in streamlining everything and moving away from that old school control model, something really important got lost in the shuffle. And here it is, the big trade-off. That mandatory government list of all the high-risk machinery, it's gone. That registry was the main tool the government, specifically the Department of Occupational Safety and Health, or DOSH, used to track and inspect the really dangerous stuff, like massive tower cranes and industrial boilers. Now, companies still have to manage their own risks for sure, but that direct government check-in balance, that safety net, it's been removed. And that's a pretty big deal.
So that brings us to the present. We've got this new law, this whole new philosophy. But how does the government make sure it actually works in the real world? What's the game plan?
Well, the answer is something called the Occupational Safety and Health Master Plan. Think of it as the official playbook from DOSH. It lays out their entire strategy for how they're going to make this new self-regulation thing stick from 2021 all the way to 2025.
And their plan really boils down to 4 key things. First up, make sure the new law has teeth with strong enforcement. Second, really push to build that self-regulation culture we've been talking about. Third, get with the times and bring in new tech. And fourth, think about the future. How do we protect people in jobs that didn't even exist a decade ago, like in the gig economy?
So if you look at their priorities, it's pretty clear where their head is at. The number one focus is building that culture. Right behind that is using technology and digitalization to make it happen. Enforcement is still super important, of course. It's the foundation. But the end game, to make safety something that's just baked into the DNA of every single company, with a little help from modern tech.
Which, of course, leaves us with one massive question. Malaysia basically traded a 50-year-old system of strict rules for a new one that's built on trust and technology. It's a bold move. But without that direct government oversight on the most dangerous machines, can a culture of self-regulation and prevention really be enough to keep everyone safe? Honestly, that's the big question, and the answer is going to shape the future of work in Malaysia for years to come. Thanks so much for tuning in.